Coming up on iOS Today, I'm joined by wonderful app developer James Thomson to talk about Vision Pro and developing apps for it.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is iOS Today, episode 693, recorded Tuesday, February 27th for Thursday, March 7th. James's Games on Vision Pro. Hello and welcome to iOS Today, the show where we talk all things iPhone, iPad, Apple TV, Apple Watch, HomePods, and of course, now Vision Pro. Mike is not here this week, but I am joined by a wonderful friend of the show, James Thomson. And welcome back, James. Thanks for joining me again.
Oh, thank you. It seems so long since we've done an episode of this.
It does indeed. And for anybody who did miss last week's episode, James told us a lot of little fun and interesting things about his wonderful apps, PCalc and Dice, including the Easter egg, James, that you mentioned, where you have been, trying things out in 3D since 2016, I believe it was, he said, which is how long Vision Pro or similar has been rumored.
Yeah, so it was like way back then that there was the first small rumors that Apple was working on some kind of headset. And I was at the time thinking, I need to learn about 3D graphics. This seems like this is a thing that I will need maybe in a year or two or whatever from 2016. Didn't quite go like that. But so I started messing around and PCalc, well, okay, let's back up slightly. I was always obsessed about the About screen in the Finder, because the Finder had a little thing where it would list the credits of everybody who'd worked on it all the way back to the Lisa. Mm-hmm. And I saw that in 1990, I think, guess. And I was like, one day my name will be in that list. And ultimately, I ended up working at Apple on the Finder. And I added my name to that list. And this was on the macOS 10 Finder. And I checked in the code, and a week later, Steve Jobs said, we are removing all the credits from the operating system and all the Easter eggs too. And I'm like,
Aww.
Great. So I have had a thing about screens since then. And I decided that I would make a very silly About screen for PCalc. And it started with, as I say, messing around with 3D stuff. And I had an icon, just the PCalc icon, and you could spin it around and rotate it and do things and ultimately throw bananas at it and things. And then it started to get a bit out of hand. This was 2016, which was a stressful year for many people. And I ended up putting a small car that you could drive around, and then a little racetrack. Then if you press the car thing again, I think you can actually see the car. And then there was a city and various other things. And
I'm very bad at driving. This as a side note for anybody watching. I'm very sorry for my poor driving skills in PCalc. I swear I'm not this bad on a natural road.
There is you can put it in traction mode, and the wheels go out, so it doesn't fall over quite as much.
That's a bit easier. Yeah, there we go.
And if you tap the camera icon, you'll get a behind the. Yeah, there we go. You can get different views. Also, if you put the thing sideways, you get a second joystick where you can control the camera, and it's a lot easier. But
which makes sense.
So it became a whole thing, and there's a whole city that there's a golden banana against the back wall, and if you find that, you crash through a wall and you're in a small city. And then there's a castle that's ruled by a panda king. There's a dragon that's guarding Dice. There's a working train system. It got out of hand, and it got so out of hand that I ultimately took the About screen out of PCalc for a variety of reasons. One of which was I didn't want PCalc getting classed as a game in China and being delisted from the store, and it went out into its own separate app called About by PCalc, which if you have it installed and you just go to the About in PCalc, it opens it automatically. But it's just fundamentally, I just decided I would move it into a little safe space of its own. And yeah, there was Game Center leaderboards at one point, and people were actually racing, and there was a physical trophy that was given away, which was won by Mr. Mike Hurley, who had the best time for clearing the level 1 of the game. And yeah, this started me messing around with 3D graphics and working out how to do this sort of stuff, because I hadn't done any 3D graphics work since I was at university, and that was a while ago. So this was just like my let's figure out what kind of thing is possible. I mean, I'm not saying that this is Grand Theft Auto. It is not. But for somebody who'd never done anything, I was just pleased to make a silly little game. Once you get into the second part of it, there is, I can't remember if I made it 42 bananas. I think I actually made it 100 bananas that you had to find that were dotted around this little city map in whatever time that you can. And yeah, it was just a way to learn about this stuff, learn what kind of things were possible, and this started me down the road of, well, I'm going to be prepared for when Apple brings out a headset. It took a while. Let's be honest. It was like 8 years later. And indeed, the 3D engine, which I built About and Dice and everything in, Apple doesn't really support anymore, which was SceneKit. Like, you can't do SceneKit as a true 3D experience on a Vision Pro. It'll still run. Things will run in 2 dimensions, but so they have a new API called RealityKit, which is where all their efforts are going these days. And I have. Well, okay. First of all, I did port PCalc to Vision Pro, and that is pretty much the easy apps to start with, because it is a 2-dimensional app, barring one banana, which is hidden in there somewhere.
Of course,
it's in the About section anyway. That was kind of like as we have established on previous episode, I need to be in the store on day 1 with PCalc. Otherwise, Apple employees literally mock me if I haven't done so.
Mean of them.
I was told at a developer lab that I had to do it, or else. So PCalc shipped. But since that point, I mean, that was okay. So when you're developing for a 3D headset and you don't have a 3D headset, it is, as was alluded to before, it's like developing for the iPhone when you don't have an iPhone. You don't know what stuff feels like. And feel is very important with this. It's one thing to see a simulation, like, because as developers, we have the simulators for Vision OS and iOS, and you can see what it looks like. But if you're clicking on it with, a mouse or something, it is not, and you might be moving around the space with a PlayStation controller. That is not how it's going to be for an actual user. So one app that I could do pretty much was PCalc, because it's effectively the 2-dimensional app, and it just looks pretty and takes advantage of Vision OS stuff, like being able to resize windows and things. And that was something that I could do. Like, as I say, I was at a developer lab and I had got most of it running. It's not super hard to get those kind of apps going.
Right.
But I'd also been playing with Dice in for something like this, and in in Dice, there's an AR mode in the iOS version, which was using RealityKit rather than SceneKit, and that was where I would sit and play with all the new 3D APIs. And that lets you, you can throw a dice and it will land on a physical table and fall off the edge of a table and roll under the sofa, and you'll never see it again. And so I wanted to do something similar for dice on Vision OS, but it just you don't get the feel for it. And I wanted to have physical hardware before I really started on it, because you just don't get the sense. And so I did, as of just over a week ago, I think, got my own Vision Pro, which was brought back into this country by a friend. In fact, the Vision Pro that was in the box was not actually my Vision Pro, which is a whole other thing, but Apple did sort that out. But yeah, so now I've got one. I can actually try stuff. And I took some of my prototypes that I'd done at the developer lab, and I put them on test flight. So that there is a Dice by PCalc on test flight for Vision Pro, which is it basically makes a tray where you can roll some dice, and it sits in front of you. And I have to say, when I first got it working, and I was wearing a headset, I must have looked like crazy person, because I was just staring at these dice and looking at them from all angles, because as you move your head around, the reflections change, and it does reflect kind of light sources in the room. And also, like, if you go in Vision Pro and you go into an environment, like you twiddle the knob on the top and you say, I'm done with reality and I would like to be on top of a mountain now. The lighting changes on the dice, like in real time, to match the environment that you're in. And if you make it nighttime, then, well, you can't see the dice very well because it's nighttime. But it's really effective. And I spent a lot of time coming up with the textures for these dice. So it's not just a flat texture. There's kind of bumps and whatever to them. And seeing that in 3 dimensions in front of your face at the right size is just it's really impressive. And it's nice to know that all the work that I did making these 3D dice way back, actually I can just directly use on this thing. So
I find it really interesting, as you said. It's very different when you're actually wearing the hardware. I saw a tiny little post by, I think it was Ken Case on Mastodon, because he's founder of the Omni Group. One of the apps they have in test flight right now is OmniFocus. And OmniFocus on iOS and macOS, like, it has these icons to represent your different perspectives. And then there's a little overlay. So you've got your big icon here, and then there's like a little badge sitting here that tells you how many things are in that. But of course, on iOS, iPadOS, macOS, this is just 2D, okay? It's the same thing. And they add a little bit of a shadow so that it looks like this is in front. But on Vision Pro, they're actually in front of one another ever so slightly. And if you're watching the video, I'm attempting to recreate this with my hands and doing a really bad job. But the fact that it's actually there, I think, you can also tell. Micah said that he tried Fruit Ninja for Vision Pro, and it just wasn't very good. And I feel like this is the sort of thing where something like PCalc, it's much easier to create the app using theoretics, right? Where you know
Yeah.
that in theory, this is what this looks like. It's going to be, it's a window. It's a square, a rectangle. It could be a tall, skinny rectangle or a wide, short rectangle. But you've got to have the buttons and so on. And it's not like somebody is going to pick up the equals button and stick it over there in the corner where on top of the cat and like have the 4 button over here and the 2 button right next to it. I mean, maybe they'll do that. They, custom layouts and all that jazz. But you're not going to scatter your buttons around a room to have an efficient, productive calculator. But with something like dice, just the way that the dice fall off the table could be very realistic, or it could be completely unrealistic, depending on what assumption you've made as a developer.
Yeah, and even with PCalc, like one of the bits of feedback that I got from it was people saying, it's great, it works perfectly, et cetera, but boy, those windows seem really big. Like if you open up the default view for an app and you don't really get much control, it's huge. It's like it's like a 70-inch television in front of your face, just the calculator. You can make it smaller and you can move it further away and stuff like that. So, it's like that. You don't get that sense when you're just looking at it 2D. It's a window. It makes sense. It's fine. But it's like you're now in it. You've got this thing in front of your face, and it's quite different. So
yes. Being surrounded by a calculator could be quite intimidating if that's not what you're expecting.
And so, yeah, with dice, it's like a 50 centimeter by 50 centimeter little wooden tray that it makes, which just floats in front of you. And you can roll dice in that. And that's all I've got currently. But it's enough that it's pretty. Also, you can throw bananas in it and ducks.
Naturally.
It is interesting to see the 3D model of a banana that I have been using for, like, as we said, 8 years as silly things in my Easter eggs, to see it banana sized sitting in a box in front of you. It's like, that's a banana. And it is this difference in feel between there is a 2D banana on my screen and there is an actual virtual banana sitting in front of my face. And that is one of the things with Vision Pro. I mean, I think, like, a lot of developers, I imagine, particularly people who are doing big stuff, will have basically started development at the beginning of February, because it was very hard to get developer kits. The likes of me did not get a developer kit. I mean, we got to go to the labs, which was very useful because that was back in August. So we could try stuff out. But, so people like Disney got developer kits, and I think they got developer kits before the product was even announced. And if you look at the Disney Plus app, they've done more than most, but even what they have done is kind of like, it puts you in 4 environments where you can watch the movies. So you can, sit in Avengers Tower or at the Monsters Inc. scare floor and things like that. And it's really cool, but it's not like the most sophisticated augmented reality thing or VR thing that I've ever experienced. It's nice, but it's not like they've spent a year working on stuff. And so I'm intrigued as to what we're going to start to see on this thing, because there's a lot of very nice software on it. Most of that is 2D or 2.5D versions of apps that, people have used before. And there is some kind of 3D, I don't want to say demos, but, it's limited scope things. I mean, there is some stuff there, but Carrot Weather's got some nice, 3D visualizations of weather and things. So it's coming. But that's the kind of level of stuff that you could do before you had hardware. And now I think, you can see that how powerful the hardware is. And just occasionally I will do something like I was looking for USDZ files, which it's like a 3D file that contains everything all in one file. And so Apple have distributed previously like when they had little AR previews of hardware, like AirPods or AirPods Max or whatever, that they would put these little files up on the website and you could look at them through your phone as a 3D object. And that's kind of fun. But if you bring them into the Vision Pro and you open them up, like you could just like, I left a pair of AirPods Max sitting on a table in my room, and there was a point where I looked at it and I was like, oh yeah, that's not real. That's my table, and that looks convincingly like a pair of AirPods Max, but it's not actually there. And there's a guitar model that they have on Apple's site as well. It's a very convincing 3D model of a guitar, which you can yes, that's the page, and you can just open that up and it will show it in using just the Files app or whatever, and it'll open it up. And yeah, I sat that guitar on the stand, like in the corner of the room, and my brain for a second is like, there is a guitar over there because it looks convincing enough to be a guitar. So yeah, the hardware is capable of like tricking your brain, and which is at a general level, when you're sort of sitting there with the thing on, you can see pretty well through it. Enough that it feels like you're wearing, ski goggles or something. But then anything can be like added into this environment. I'm making little dice, and there's the example that they used to show the press a lot was this thing where a little portal opens in the corner of your screen and a dinosaur comes out, sticks its head out and sniffs at you. And it's really good. And, I want to see where we are a year from now or whatever. Yeah. And it's a question, in my mind, it's a question of the market for this thing so far is quite small. I mean, however many they've sold, we don't know. Who is going to spend the time to create the products that will sell the hardware? If you see what I mean. And I think it could happen. Because I think the thing is very capable, and obviously at this point, it's a $3,500, $4,000 plus with tax device. It is not a cheap thing by any means, particularly, if you compare it to something like a Meta Quest, which is like $500, and they're very different things, but superficially similar. That the Vision Pro is like, I've described it before, it's like, I think it's the most technologically advanced piece of consumer electronics I've ever used. And so I want to see what comes of this thing. And I want there to be a cheaper one so that people will buy it. So there will be software made for it so that people will buy it and so on.
Yeah, because otherwise it's like Windows Phone, right? Windows Phone could have potentially been very successful, but there were no apps. So there were no users, but there were no users because there were no apps. So they bought an Android or an iPhone or whatever instead. And the problem just got bigger and bigger and bigger as those app stores got larger. Microsoft tried fixing it by paying developers to create apps, even if there weren't going to be users for them. And then ultimately Windows Phone just disappeared. Now, this is an Apple product, so, there's definitely a large advantage behind it of there's a certain category of nerd like yourself, and I suspect myself in the not too distant future who just, I want that and I want that now. But it is, because it's such a personal device as well, you have to have it customized. You have to buy the light shield for it and so on. You have to buy the Zeiss optical inserts to function instead of glasses. If you're wearing glasses like I am and you are, James, then it's not something. It doesn't even have a two-person, like a second user option. It's like the iPad. Some people really want user accounts for the iPad. That's something that exists in a school setting and corporate settings where you can set it up for that. But it doesn't exist on the Vision Pro. The closest you get is a guest mode, which doesn't remember your preferences.
And the problem with that, because we were trying that out, and it's like when you put it in the guest mode, the guest has to go through basically all the setup, so they have to do the all the eye tracking configuration and things. And it's not, you want to say, hey, look at this cool dinosaur. Here, put this thing on. Look, there's a cool dinosaur. But you can't do that. And you in a situation where you want to share this device with a partner, what you want it to do is you put it on, it scans your eyes because it does scan your eyes, and it could work out, oh, this is James. I will switch to James's user, or and taking off the lenses and stuff is simple. Like I got a set of lenses this morning, and they're just little magnetic things, and they snap on very nicely. So yeah, I hope that for Vision OS 2, that is something that they are thinking about, because there's just so many things where I've wanted to show something. And the best you can do is you can cast stuff to your Apple TV or whatever. So you can show roughly what it is you're looking at. The catch with that is if you activate that mode, it blacks out any copy protected video anywhere in the whole system and doesn't tell
you.
You
show Disney Plus or something like that to just show how great this particular interaction animation is. It's just black.
Yeah. And it doesn't tell you. So I thought it was broken because it was like, well, everything's gone black. I don't know what's going on. Just put up a little, show it in the headset and then put up a thing on the television saying, I can't show you this because of lawyers.
Yes. Yes, because lawyers is as the very short version if you've got a very small TV screen. Somebody has just posted, I believe it was Scooter X has just shared in the Club to It Discord, 9 to 5 Mac actually has just posted an article about Vision Pro rental by the hour or the day is something that people are setting up in China. So apparently one of these rental outlets has said it's had more than 10,000 customers since the service was launched, which was just a couple of days after the first device went on sale. And it's about $13.60 an hour or $208 a day, which is kind of pricey. But I could imagine, for example, you mentioned, James, that you, as part of, before the device was released, but while you were developing things, you went to a lab. That was a single day, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
so you had to write all of your code, create the whole app, take it with you, and hope that it worked. And then you had a day to try and mess with stuff and get it working.
And that was what we actually got was 6 hours or so to sit there in the device with no chaperones to do whatever we liked, which was way more than any of the press got. So I knew a whole load of details that the press people didn't know, which I couldn't tell them because, NDAs. But because, we actually got to use the thing as users rather than being run through a kind of very scripted demo with somebody standing behind you saying, now look at the dinosaur. And it was really interesting to get that sort of early experience of it, to try it out and to see what worked and what didn't, and get this kind of 6 months ahead of time look at it. And so, I can see that people would want to do this. I mean, you get the demos in the stores in the US where that's the only place that they're selling them currently. But yeah, I mean, in China, I can imagine that there's going to be, in many countries, there's going to be places do you want to come and try a Vision Pro for an hour or something?
Yeah.
The only problem with it really is this is the most personalized thing. It's if you're buying a watch, the most configuration I've ever done before was you specified what size band you wanted, and you got that when you picked up the watch. But this thing, when you buy it, scans your face, it works out the size of the little cushion bit inside, works out what size head strap and things that it thinks you need. And then, you have to send off a prescription if you've got one. And from a US optometrist, which adds extra complexity if you're outside the US. And then you have this thing that is extremely configured to you. And then if your partner that you're trying to share it with has a differently shaped head, then, you need to, well, now I need to get a second, I can't remember, there's the light seal.
I think it's the light shield.
Light shield. I keep wanting to say light seal, and I know it's not that. Anyway, the light shield, those are $200 a piece. And optical inserts are $150 for the prescription ones. So yeah, even once you've got the thing, which is quite expensive, then you need to configure it for different people. So with these kind of rental things, I wonder how they're doing it. Like, have they just bought every single combination of things?
I mean, if they've got 10,000 users, you would kind of expect them to have all of the different options available. But yeah. And you need to have like all the lenses, which is the really tricky thing. I mean, you can do the basics. I think they have, I don't know what they call this, because there's two classes of the lenses you can get. There's the like
prescription ones and readers.
Ones.
Yeah. And I think the readers are probably just, your basic magnifications in both eyes or whatever. But
though I believe you can just wear contact lenses with your Vision Pro, assuming you can wear contact lenses, because not everybody can. I think
you can't use hard contact lenses or something, because I assume that they interfere with the optical scanning or the eye tracking. So if like, I love the device. I think it has great potential. I am curious how quickly we're going to get to realize the potential of the hardware. And I'm going to do what I can. Like I say, I'm messing around with dice. I have a version of the About by PCalc map, which I converted into a format, and I've been inside it, and I've sort of stuck as a giant, sort of looking around this place that I created, and that feels weird. Like, wow. I know this looking at it through a 2D screen, but now I'm standing on the bridge that takes you from the first section into the second section, and I'm going to, at the very least, I'm going to make something where you can fly around this. Yes, that was the little section of bridge that I was next to. And I'm going to make something that you can fly around this and have a look at all the little Easter eggs that are tucked around the map. And because I think that would be really fun, just to have somewhere to explore. Because, as I say, there aren't that many apps out there at the moment where it's like a completely immersive, like AAA game experience type thing. And I want to see them. I want to see them coming. And I want, if Apple wants to give me, a couple of million to develop some experiences, you know where to find me.
I mean, I imagine if Apple could just give you a chunk of money, and maybe Disney could give you some of those new holo tiles that they've been developing. Yes. So for anybody who's not familiar, Disney relatively recently announced a very cool project called the holo tile, which are little hexagonal tiles that you can put together in a sort of mat, but they're actually ball bearings. So as you walk on them, it rolls you back to where you were. So I'm imagining if Disney can give you those and Apple just give you, a chunk of cash, give you a little bit of time and resources, obviously. And then are we going to get a holodeck from Star Trek?
I mean, I think we're getting closer to, as I say, this thing can already trick my brain. Like yes. I have thought that imaginary things are real while wearing it. And so I think, it's not that far from at least a visual holodeck. I don't think we'll be like touching anything in it until we get our full haptic suits from Apple. But it is a fun vision of the future. No pun intended. It's a vision of the future they're currently selling. So it's fun.
Yeah. And, you managed to get PCalc out onto the App Store with 6 hours with the device because I had basically.
Yes, I did. I did spend another month or so from the point where Apple said, "Oh, by the way, we're going to release this on February the 2nd," and everybody went, "Oh no," because a lot of people had sort of, I think, had done their labs and had got stuff working kind of, and then I now actually need to ship real software I'll go off and do that. And then Apple gives you effectively a month. And that's what I had to turn my prototype into an actual polished product, which I think did reasonably well. But
at the same time, you did only have 6 hours of actual time with the physical device.
Yes.
Where you could interact with it in the way that you and users would be interacting with it, which...
And that's something you then have to that's more than most people had. So I could then imagine, I know there's various things so when you're looking around, you highlight the thing that the user's looking at, which is kind of useful. So they know when they tap their fingers together, that's what's going to be activated. And so there's specific code that you need to write. If you have any custom UI, there's not like a standard button or something, which PCalc is all custom UI. And I had to make code to make when I had little round buttons, they would highlight with round edges and things like that. So, and you want to do that kind of thing. And you also PCalc has a lot of square buttons, which you probably shouldn't have square buttons because apparently it's a lot easier for your eye to lock on to something that has rounded corners, which is again something that you wouldn't really know unless you're using it or have read the developer guidelines. It is interesting because I'm sure there's stuff on the store and you try it and you think, this doesn't really work. So there's people coming out now with lots of little utilities. There's one, and I can't remember the developer, but it basically makes a little lava lamp that shows your battery status.
Oh, that's very cool.
And it's a perfect idea because it's I'll sit this in the corner of the room on a table and I can glance over and it's I can tell what the battery level is of my device because that's not something that it surfaces visually. And I can see there's a market at the moment for these kind of small things where somebody's had an idea of, hey, this would be a cool thing to have as a 3D object. Just we live in interesting times, I guess.
Yes.
And we will. The thing is, I could not give you a prediction as to whether this is going to succeed or fail as a product. I don't know. I don't think if it fails, it's not going to fail because the product is bad. I think the only reason it might fail is if developers don't make stuff for it. And then you've got Apple's apps, which are good generally. But you really need the most 3D stuff because I think the first app they showed during the launch was Excel, and that is not the most 3D groundbreaking product. Very complicated product to port to a new device, certainly, but and I think they're trying to sell it as, well, this is a replacement for your laptop. This is a thing that you will have on your face, and you can do the things that you do on your laptop on this thing, which is true. And I think it does have that to it. But where it really shines is with stuff where it's actual 3D content. So I think it's kind of like at the start of the iPhone that we don't quite know what this product is going to be yet, or the watch. When the watch first came out, there was a lot of stuff. I'm sure we all sent our heartbeats back and forth to our loved ones once, and never did it again. And then this is a health and fitness device. That this has a very specific purpose that people want and will buy. And
the Apple Watch today is so much more powerful, and that's a software as well as a hardware thing. It's got much better over time. It's got more sensors, better battery life, and things like that. All of which hopefully can also happen to the Vision Pro. But at the same time, hopefully we can also get so I've forgotten what what the branding is for the Apple Watch that's not the Series 9. It's they have
Ultra?
a specific. No, not the Ultra. I'm thinking of the one that's like the light version, but it's not. It's the Apple Watch SE. That's the one.
SE, yes.
Maybe we can get a Vision SE or something like that, which, won't be as cool and awesome. And maybe it will fit more like, say, an Oculus Quest 3 than a Vision Pro, in that, there's, a couple of different sizes, and there's, adjusters on all the bands, which adjust a lot more than, the ones that they've got. But if that could come out, in a year or so at, a much lower price, then that's going to incentivize a lot more people to just play with it and try it around and buy it instead of an iPad or a Mac, perhaps.
Yeah, and I think there's the very complicated screen on the front, which has not, in my own personal experience in my household, has not seemingly added very much to the product. It's like, I get what they're going for with that, is to try and keep you, make you still part of the room if you're sitting in the room with this thing on your face, and make it not so isolating for either you or the other people. But I think there's probably other ways of doing that are less involved, because I think this is we're not going to cut any corners on this version of this. This is going to be like the best of everything. It's interesting, but I want to see this being available, so that when I'm got software that I'm trying to sell to people, that I will actually. So far, I'm not 100% sure I've broken even yet in terms of PCalc sales. I think it's close, but I would like more people to be able to buy my software on more platforms.
Yes. Yeah. Locations in the chat room has just put it very well. Like, it won't fail. The Apple Vision Pro won't fail, but we might fail it, because, we're not there yet, perhaps, which, is great. Well, thank you for giving us that bit of insight, James. And of course, folks can download PCalc, or About by PCalc, as well as PCalc and Dice by PCalc, on the App Store. Even if you don't have a Vision Pro, they're available, and they're also available on Apple TV and Mac OS too, which is really great, because they're such wonderful apps. And fingers crossed, we'll all get to see a lot more Vision Pro things, hardware and software, in the not too distant future. Apple's Vision Pro site has got some FAQs, including how can you get it outside the US, and it says coming later this year. So fingers crossed, later this year is sooner rather than later.
Yes, it would be nice.
Yes. And with that, we're going to go on to a little bit of feedback, because Bill sent us a question. And you have a really lovely bonus answer for this, James. So Bill has asked, now that we can FaceTime via Apple TV using our phones, have you found a suitable mount like the ones that work for a MacBook that's suitable for the top of a flat screen TV? Thanks, Bill. And this is a very good question, because so I believe the one that Bill is talking about is the continuity Belkin mount for the MacBook, which is a little circular disc. I really wish I brought mine in here. In fact, I wish I brought both of mine in here, because there's two, but there's a little circle with a disc, and it sort of flips out and sits on there. But Belkin have a second one, which sits on top of a monitor for the Apple TV, or a regular monitor, and various other things. And that could be an alternative. But James, you had a very different approach to solving this problem, which I would love for you to explain. We've got a little picture of exactly what it is that you created here to solve this problem.
So all problems can be solved with the use of Lego, as we know. It's like sort of very coarse 3D printing. And I built this originally to go on my studio display when there was no mounts at all. And I was using Camo, which is very nice software, which gives you much more bells and whistles if you're trying to control things. I'm speaking to you through Camo as we speak. and I have an iPhone sitting in this little Lego thing. I've had to rebuild it a number of times as I've got new phones that are slightly different sizes, and it needed to get one brick wider to incorporate like an iPhone 13, which is in it just now. And yeah, so I just built myself a thing, and it's got these little arms that hook over the top, which can be moved to like so for thicker and thinner things, and it hangs there quite nicely. I would probably, if I was redoing it, I would make the little bits that hang out over the top, I would have made them out of black bricks so that you don't see them against the screen, which is more annoying on a television. But I built this thing maybe about 2 years ago at this point, and I'm just still using it because it works very nicely, and it's fully adaptable whenever Apple changes anything.
And this is, of course, a great feature because, you know, all of the different sizes of iPhone, even from year to year, a Pro Max is not the same size as it was last year and so on, which is why the cases and so on don't always fit perfectly. And so if you've got Lego at home, that is a great free solution. Or if you want an excuse to buy Lego and play with it, then that is just a great excuse for that. There is, of course, the Belkin option as well, which is available. Well, I say it's available. It's listed on Belkin's website and Apple's website, but in the US, on both of those sites, it is not available. In the UK, it is available. But for those folks in the US who are looking for solutions sooner rather than later, I did have a look, and on Amazon, there is something by a brand called Sodi, S-O-D-I, which comes in a couple of different colors. There's ivory white, solid black, and there's also black. I'm not sure what the difference is between black and solid black. I'm assuming that there is one because one is $3 more, but those are $25 to $28 as an option. And those are using MagSafe as well. So, you know, the phone just MagSafes on. So if this is your day-to-day phone and you don't necessarily want to be sliding it down into a Lego housing of some kind, then that could work quite well as well. And the advantage of these ones is they sit on top of your TV rather than underneath your TV, so you don't get an accidental like up the nose shot like you do sometimes with cameras that are positioned in the hinge of a keyboard or similar things. Because that's never a flattering angle, and I don't ever understand why that's an option. But fortunately, Apple don't do that. They do put the cameras at the top of their monitors. So there we go. That's a couple of suggestions for Bill. And with that, it is time for Shortcuts Corner. All right. And now it is time for the part of the show where we answer some of your questions and requests about shortcuts specifically. So we have a longer question here from Dickie or Rich, who is from Boston, which I will read out in its entirety. And bear with, folks, because it is a longer one, but there's a very good explanation for it. So, hi, Micah and Rosemary. And James, that's an editorial. Dickie from Boston here. I'm a new listener and enjoy having you two on while I'm working away at my desk. And recently, in my work role, I came across a task. I thought shortcuts should be able to do this for me. It may also be a helpful shortcut for others trying to standardize photos. Here's the issue. I have folders of images, and in that folder, they're broken down into subfolders. So folders in a folder with images in them. All the images are in PNG form and are too large, dimensions and file size for our web project specs, which are 72 dots per inch RGB and maximum of 1,900 pixels wide or tall. I tried to write a shortcut to use as a menu item, quick action, or from the Shortcuts app that does this. Gets all of these files/images, including any and subfolders of the main folder. For each file or image collected from the main and subfolders above, do this. If they are larger than 1,900 pixels wide, resize them down to 1,900 pixels wide. And then that should be on both sides. Convert the file to a JPEG or PNG so I can change the quality and shave off the file size to save some bandwidth. And then finally, step 4, save them in a new folder I'm prompted to name. Here's the rub. If the shortcut is less than 1,900 pixels on either side, I want the shortcut to skip the resizing and just jump to converting it to the JPEG or PNG and not resizing the image, and then continue to the save action, which is number 4. I know Photoshop can do batch processing, but I was looking for a down and dirty shortcut where I select a folder and have a new folder that I name created with all of the newly processed web-ready images ready to use. I hope one of you wicked smart folks could help lighten my workload with a shortcut. There are chicken hats in it for you both if you can get this working. Thanks for all the educational content and keep up the fantastic work from Rich, aka Dickie. And Rich actually sent 2 images to us. One was a screenshot of the shortcut that he created himself that he was trying to do. And when I look at it, I can immediately see one tiny little problem. And he also helpfully sent us a handy little image of a chicken, which is one of the examples. And I'm just looking for the folder that I created earlier today. Perfect. So I have here on my iPhone, I have a folder called iOS Today, which is our main folder. Well, it contains picture examples, which is what we're working with. So this is a folder. And inside of this, there is a folder called Chicken Folder. And inside of Chicken Folder, we have a very large, it's 2.3 megabytes, picture of a chicken. It's a very nice purple, teal, turquoisey sort of chicken. And if I tap on it, the background goes away as well because this is a PNG. There is one little thing, and James, I'd like your advice on this. So based on what Dickie's written, do you think if it's larger than 1,900 pixels wide and larger than 1,900 pixels in height, should I resize it both times, or should I just resize the largest one down to 1,900? What do you think on that?
I mean, I would say you would want to keep the aspect ratio of anything. So you would probably find the longer side and then take that down to 1900.
That makes perfect sense. Yes. And this is always the tricky thing, understanding exactly what it is that somebody wants to do with something, as well as, what they've said. So what I'm going to start with here is not by opening drafts. That was an automation trigger there. I'm going to use get contents of folder, and I'm going to select a folder. And if I use browse, and I just need to pop into iCloud Drive. If I use this one and then I go, there we go. Pictures example. This is the perfect folder because it contains our folder, which has the chicken called chicken folder, which contains the picture. Okay, so now we have our get contents of folder. And when I expand here, I can toggle on recursive. And recursive means that I'm going to get everything inside of the folders in that folder. Okay, so we selected our main folder at the top, and then there are potentially other folders in here or straight up images, and I'm just using recursive to get all of those files. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use an action called get images from input. And this means that if somebody's put like a text file in there or something that says, this is a picture of a chicken, for example, which somebody might do because they're trying to be helpful, then we're only going to have images when we're done with this. And then we'll need to repeat with each image. Okay, so we only have one image here because I decided to keep it small for testing purposes. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a number action here. And I'm going to use number. I'll just put that inside the repeat. And then if I tap into that, then I can scroll across and I can insert the repeat item and I can put width in there. And then I'm just going to duplicate that and I'm going to put height into the second one. And this just means that I'm definitely dealing with 2 numbers, which makes it a little bit easier for me. So what I need to do now is I need an if action, which is hiding from me. And again, this goes inside the repeat. Okay, and so what I will do is I'm just going to select and I'm going to use the select variable option just to make sure I'm selecting the width. And then that gets called number. So I'm just going to rename it to the word width. Okay, and then I'm going to change it, change the comparison to say if width is greater than, and then I'm going to select a variable again, and I'm going to select the second number, which I will rename to height. Then, well, we need to decide what to do. So if our width is greater than our height, perfect. So then I need another if, because we only want to do this if it's greater than 1900. So there we go. Now inside of here, if, nope, not height. And I need to, oops, that's definitely not the right thing. I selected the current date automatically. I will select, and then I will grab our width is greater than 1900. And in this case, I can delete the otherwise, and I will just pop in a resize, which has an I in it, not an O, because I can't type very well today. There we go. Then I'll put in a resize image, and I will set that to 1900. And then what it's doing here is it's resizing, and I need to change it to not resize the height, but instead it needs to resize our repeat item, okay? Because the repeat is what we're actually working with. That is a single image. And my phone has just come back to dark mode. Whoops. And then what we'll need to do is just duplicate this section. And so we're going to say, and put it in the otherwise, but we're going to change it so that we are working with our height instead. And I've just put the width back in. Well done, Riz. So variables, height. And then
Nothing like live coding.
I know.
Fun.
It's so tricky. And then what I will do when I resize it this time is I will change out, I'll delete the 1900, which was in the width, and that changes to auto width. And then bam, we have one, and put 1900 into the height. So now if it's bigger, so if it's a landscape photo, so width is greater than the height, and the width is more than 1900, we will resize it to 1900 pixels in width. And if the height is more than, if it's a portrait photo and the height is more than 1900, it resizes it down to 1900 in height. Excellent. So now we have that, and then we will need to just convert our image. Now, we can convert our image to multiple different formats. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put this right at the end, okay? So what will happen here is because I deleted the otherwise on the inside ifs where it says, hey, if the width is greater than 900 pixels or if the height is greater than 1900 pixels, what it puts should be just the repeat item. But I'm just going to be very sensible here, and I'm going to use a set variable action just so that we know exactly what it is that we're working with, okay? So I am going to set the variable image, and I'll start at the top, and I will set it to the repeat item, and then underneath each resize action, I'm just going to change it to the, and I will just double check to make sure that I am selecting the right variable here. There we go, resized image, and paste below there and set that, image to, and select here. There we go. So we've got something called resized image. So now I can clear that, and then I can select, and I'm going to, that's not the select I was looking for. There we go. I'm going to use our image singular, okay? And I'm going to convert it to JPEG. Now, you can, if you're converting to JPEG, change the quality. So you can make it potato quality, or you can make it Vision Pro quality. Pick your option, and also preserve metadata. If you don't want things like location, which may be embedded into an image, then you to stay there, then you can turn off preserve metadata. If I tap on JPEG, I can also choose what output format it is that I want. So I can do something like a PNG if I would like to, but that won't let me change the quality. So I'm just going to select around about 70-75% as quality, and then use a JPEG as my format. So with that done, now we need the name of a folder. And I am going to be very sneaky with this, and I'm putting this outside the repeat action to be clear. And I'm just going to use and ask for text with the prompt folder name. Okay, and then I am going to use a create folder action, and there it is under documents. We're going to create a folder in shortcuts, and you can change where you want this folder to live. If you tap on shortcuts, or if you're on a Mac, you can click on it. And then I will use that provided input. And then we are just going to use a save file action. Now, we don't want to save our creative folder. Nah, we're going to clear that, tap and hold on this and select, and we're going to use our repeat results and we're going to save them, turn off ask where to save. We are going to actually tap and hold on shortcuts and use select, use our created folder. So now what we're doing is we're getting all of the pictures. Now, if you're setting this up to work as a service or a quick action or things like that, you'll want to make sure that you do that too. We're getting the contents of our folder and we're getting all of the images from this. And we're going through each image. We're checking if it's wide and it is tall. And if it's more than 1,900 pixels in width, then we're resizing it. We're checking it if it's taller than it is wide. If the height is more than 1,900 pixels, we're resizing it. Whether or not it's resized, we're converting it to a JPEG. Then we're asking for a folder where to put this, creating that folder, and saving all of the files together at the end. Now, you could save each file as you converted it into a folder that you create right at the beginning, which if you've got thousands and thousands and thousands of images, might be worth doing in case something goes wrong part of the way through and it runs into something that's officially an image, but it isn't actually an image. And it's something that's Photoshop has spat out into a corner somewhere and nobody noticed it. But let me just run this. And I'm going to call this chicken update. That's the folder. And tap done. And that's it. We have inside of shortcuts, we should have a new folder called chicken update, which I am looking for, but files is being a little bit silly on me. There we go. There's a new folder called chicken update, which contains one resized image. And that's it. And it's now 366 kilobytes. So it's definitely smaller than it was. So I believe that worked. And with that, that is the end of today's episode. So thank you once again for joining me here, James. It's unfortunate Micah couldn't be here today, but he will be back next week. And you have been a wonderful co-host in the meantime.
Well, I know I could not replace Micah, but it is a pleasure to keep his seat warm for him while he's away doing civic things.
Excellent. Well, where can folks find you if they are looking to do so?
So as discussed previously, if you go to onlyjames.fans, that will take you to my Mastodon account. And otherwise, PCalc.com has links to all my apps.
Fabulous. And you can find me over at rosemaryorchard.com, where I have links to apps, books, podcasts, etc. And of course, all of my different social media sites. And of course, you can also find me hanging out in that Club Twit Discord in the live chat channel during the shows and in the iOS Today discussion area after the show. And in the meantime, we'll be back next week with Micah with another great episode for you folks. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.